Hey everyone, welcome back. Part two of the art of pricing profitably. Just like last time, grab something to write with, some notes or Word doc, something to jot some notes down with. If you have already, if you want to have a split screen for this presentation and you can have a spreadsheet open simultaneously, that's your option. And then just in general, if there are any questions, you can either post them in the forum. We have a special space set up for that. You could send the questions to Amanda during the presentation or after as well. So with that said, let's get started. So this is one of the critical questions I asked at the beginning. I ask you to drop or jot these notes down for yourself. The separation of owner-operators. Whatever you need to separate the two. It's very difficult to do, especially, well, from my perspective. You already know my background. But you need to understand that there's an investment in the business, just like you would be a venture capitalist for another company. And then there's being an employee, the things that you do in the company. And you need to be compensated for them. Most companies, just from doing this for over 10 years live, I know the answer to this. A great majority of the smaller companies or newer companies do not actually pay themselves a correct salary or payroll, whatever you want to call it, based on the work that you do in a company. But the fact of the matter is, you have to. For me, I've worked my way, this is 20-something years in the business. I no longer do physical labor, extremely rare. If I do, I usually make a mistake at this point. I'm just so out of practice with everything going on in the shop or out in the field. But anyway, you'll notice that for my hours, this is from a couple years ago, basically what I was looking at working in a week. What are the things I do? You'll notice the yearly salary value. I put it in. Those yearly salary values are based on if you did one of these positions full-time for your company. So the numbers are going to fluctuate based on the volume of business that you do and also the area that you're in. If you take a look at the lower left, you'll see a link. It's called Salary Calculator. I hope it is still up to date. This is a link that takes you to a website that you can search your region and get a general idea of what you would be expected to be paid or to pay someone else to do your job or jobs in the company. Excuse me, what that value would be for the entire year. And then you're going to put in the actual hours that you do that. This is based on a 40-hour week. So if I do 10 hours a week, 25% of 40 hours, so 25% of 150, this would be the payroll I would expect to pay myself. This goes down through all the fields. Just like on other tabs on the spreadsheet, these are titles I put in. You can add more, break it down, pull them together, whatever you want to do. And you can update your numbers based on what you do. You have to be realistic, especially about these upper management and sales kind of things. If you're a 1 or 2 person operation, expecting a yearly salary of 150, and if you're only doing sales volume of $400,000 or $500,000 is completely unrealistic. So you need to mesh these things together. Realistic with the volume that you do or you should be doing in your area and what the company can actually absorb based on gross sales. You need to have the numbers to justify these. You're going to do that for everything there. My job is, so CEO, COO, this is the most important thing, the highest value. This is the thing as an owner you should be spending your most amount of time on, other than sales, or those two things combined together. This is making your business better, making improvements, implementing policies and procedures and training employees and staying on top of everything and forecasting and marketing and all those kind of things, marketing plans, not actual marketing, but planning and implementing and overseeing and evaluating your operation constantly to make improvements. That's where the more you put into it, the more positive things you're going to get out of it, the more value you're going to get out of it. Middle management. So I'm no longer doing any kind of middle management. So if you ask my guys what my job is, I have two jobs: sell projects and be a buffer between clients and the shop. So anything that goes wrong in the field doesn't affect the shop, the employees, or management, so those guys can just constantly work. That's my job. So once I sell a project, I have a right-hand guy, John, that I hand the job off to. He's my engineer. He does the field measuring and all of the drawings, all that kind of stuff. Gives me that information for me to meet with the client and close out the sale and get the deposit. Once that happens, once the job is sold and it's signed off on, I have another guy, Mark, who then is my production manager or general manager, whatever you want to call him. He will take the job, hit the floor. He will deal with all the vendors ordering, layout tasks for all the employees, schedule deliveries, oversee installation, and do post preliminary sale communication with the client. Unless there's a problem, if it's just setting up dates or getting samples out or something like that, he then deals with that. So it frees up my time. Plus, not only frees up my time, but the less middlemen in between your clients and the people actually doing the job on these kind of things, the better, because there's less chance of miscommunication or forgetting something. So that's the way we operate. Everybody's going to be different. Marketing, I do a little bit of marketing. My marketing right now is basically I just call up people that I've already got contacts, make sure they're doing good, just stay in communications with people. But I do, with that said, I do want to host another networking event in my shop very soon. Sales, predominantly my sales are repeat clients at this point. My close rate on repeat clients is extremely high because they pre-qualify people for me. I don't believe I mentioned this before. So we're to the trade only. We do not have a showroom. If I have a homeowner or a business owner that contacts me directly, if they don't have a professional that they are working with already, then I will put them in touch with a contact that I already have, somebody in my network to keep it in network to oversee the project. Or if the project is the correct fit, I will oversee the job. That's where that construction management company, project management company comes into play. But for most part, my sales are remote. People send me plans. I work out of my house 99% of the time. I get email plans, texts, phone calls. That's my project. That's my job. And because I've already got my pricing put together, it's very quick for me to do sales. So realistically, my sales is not even 8 hours a week. It's maybe 3. Engineering, this is kind of hand in hand in the sales and crossing over, handing the job off to John. He's extremely experienced, so there's very little bit that I need to explain to him. But there are certain scenarios because we build a lot of different things, not just casework, where we'll have discussions or I'll work on the engineering with him. But then he takes over. I don't get down in the minutia. Estimating, that's part of the estimating and sales thing. I do it in QuickBooks. It's extremely fast. Project manager. So project manager, this could also probably be called problem solver, firefighter, whatever thing you want to call it. Once I make a sale, the biggest chance of me losing money on a project is not how well we build things in the shop or how streamlined we are or making mistakes. That kind of stuff in comparison is very small to where the real problems are going to come into play. And that is problems out in the field, miscommunication, people changing specs, not having good team communication, all that kind of stuff. So my job is reactionary. This is why we do a lot of business for very high money people. I'm always available for phone calls and problems. If and when there is a problem on a project, whether it's our cause or somebody else's, if I'm not immediately available, like literally that day within a couple of minutes to talk to them or go down to the project, it will be the next morning without question. And people really appreciate that. The more you handle those kind of things up front, the less static, the less problems, the less double work it's going to cause in engineering and production down the road, where negative financial impact could be huge. So that's where I spend the most amount of time. Physical labor is 0. That's me, 45 hours a week. I'm actually not working anywhere near that amount right now. Well, not just luck, not luck. Just working this long and having this many connections. I really don't need to work that many hours, and having systems in place and having people around me. Everybody's going to be different. You obviously, the more years you put into it, you want to work less hours. Regardless of that, The most important thing right here when you fill out your own numbers is going to be this number. And I'm not sure how big your screen is, if you can't read this or not. The total amount you need to pay yourself as an employee needs to be equal to or more than you need to take home to take care of your personal life. It has to be. If it is not, you're not going to be able to pay your bills. You may possibly go personally bankrupt. That's not how you set things up. And that is why when I asked the question about putting down what you pay yourself, this question is so important. You have to have a fixed number in there that is equal to or more than you need to take home. If you don't, nothing's going to work. Your business isn't going to work. Your personal life is not going to work. You're not going to be able to pay your business bills. You're not going to be able to pay your personal bills. This is all for nothing. When it comes time to justify what these numbers are, you got to ask yourself, you can put it either of two perspectives. Would you do all the things you do for your own company? Would you do them for somebody else, be an employee of another company, and not expect to be paid for that? Oh, of course you wouldn't. You're not going to put the amount of time and effort that you put into whatever the hats are that you wear in your company and work for somebody else and not be expected to be paid what market rate is for that. So why on earth would you not do that for yourself? You're an idiot if you don't do it. I'm not calling you an idiot. I'm calling myself an idiot. Remember, this is based on my mistakes, but I'm passing this information along to you. You absolutely must do this. If you don't, if you can't, whatever the reason is, then I'm not trying to tell you close it, but you don't belong in business if you can't achieve this. The other way to take a look at that is whether you pay yourself that. What if you had to hire somebody? Not what if. What if the plan should be you're either going to transition your company over in sales or to somebody there, or maybe you're going to liquidate the company. But over time, you do want to work less. You do want to pass these hats off to somebody else and just be working off of true profits out of the company. That is my goal, to be working off of pure profits. Hopefully at some point, it may never happen, but I'm okay with that because I really don't work that much now. So the question would be, would you expect somebody else to come and do all the things that you do, work all the hours that you've put in, and not pay them what the market rate is? The answer is no. They would quit instantaneously. You know that. I know that. If you can't get somebody to work for you for what you're currently paying for yourself, if you wouldn't work for somebody else for what you're currently paying yourself, then you're not accounting enough. Put these numbers in. This is the third biggest reason people don't make money in this business. How many billable hours are there in a year? In generic question, if you don't know, if you haven't thought about this, like I did when I started, it's 52 weeks in a year, 5 work days in a week. It's 260 days times 8 hours a day. That's 1,920 hours. That's not reality. You're not going to work 52 weeks a year. There's going to be holidays. There's going to be things that come up. There's going to be all those things. That goes for yourself and that goes for your employees. So how many billable hours are there actually? Everybody's going to be a little bit different. Depends on how well you perform, how many days you work a year, how many holidays you pay people, how many vacation days, all that kind of stuff. In the beginning, part one of the first questions I asked you, or we put together, asked you how much was your break even for the year, and I said 48 weeks in a year, average four weeks a month. At the best, that's what it's going to be. For us, we have 6 paid holidays. I have 1 unpaid holiday. That's the Friday after Thanksgiving. I let the guys off. I give them a 4-day weekend, but I would only pay them for Thanksgiving and the other 5 major holidays. Every employee gets 1 week of paid vacation, and then they get 1 week of personal days, and they can use that for vacation as well. I'm not hardcore with implementing that it has to be for a medical emergency or something like that. They deserve it, and I bill for it, so it's covered. So the most amount of working hours in a year is not 1,920. It's going to be, or excuse me, it's not going to be 260 work days. There's going to be vacation days. There's going to be holidays. Those are the 6 holidays I just talked about. 1 personal day, I actually took that off. Our total is 11 days right now. So the total amount of working hours. I'm not sure if that's correct. I'll have to check the spreadsheet here. That you're going to have are going to be less than that. It's going to be based on 48 weeks or less. You could be 47 weeks. This shop rate is the total shop rate. Remember now, so going back, this is all the other tabs that we've already covered. Our fixed overhead, this is our money. This is going to be your amount that you're going to be looking at. This is what it costs you to open a door before sales. This is going to be, excuse me, your operating expense once the doors are open and you're producing stuff, minus materials and minus your labor and minus your investment. Here's your investment cost. This is what you need to recoup. You'll remember that. This is what we just went over. This is your owner. Some companies are going to have multiple people. I should have said that when you've done that last tab. If you have multiple owners or an owner and a half, somebody who's partially involved in the business, you're going to put the cumulative hours in that past spreadsheet, and that's the total there. So this is the total yearly operating expenses minus materials, minus any kind of commissions if you had commissioned salespeople, and minus the most important thing, minus profits, which we're still not even close to getting into yet. We will be by the end of this. Anyway, so this is the total hours in a year, actual workable days. To divide this, what your hourly rate's going to be covering all these costs here. Now, depending on how many employees you have, you're going to have billable employees, and that's where you're going to put that in here. So every company is different. I go up and down. We have some employees. I'm what's the saying? I'm slow to hire, quick to fire. I have some extremely long-term employees. I've got people with me. I've got my first employee I've been working with since '92. He came to the business with me. He was my number one employee. Still works with me. Mark, I explained to you, my left-hand man, he's been with me since 1999. John's been with me since 2004. I've got 2 or 3 other employees that are probably in that 4 to 10 year window, and I do have some new hires. One of them is actually a friend of mine who's quasi-retired, who just works a couple of days a week doing maintenance around the shop. It helps me, helps him, works everybody. It's how many working hours. So I'm not a billable employee. I figure in all my calculations based on production employees. That's in the shop, out in the field installing, and in the finish booth. Engineering is not in here. John is not in here. I am not in here. Remember when I explained Mark that he takes over the job. So Mark's my general manager, but he also works. He's a hands-on manager, foreman, whatever. So about half of his time is spent running a CNC. He's a CNC operator, and we also do a lot of hardwood. So he'll also process the primary. He does the primary rip on the saw. So he basically, and that's how he generates information and explains and paces stuff in the shop. He'll do the primary processing and hand it off to somebody else in the shop to pick up on secondary processing. And he can gauge how much to put into work on the shop floor or what needs to be put on the shop floor based on what the first trigger event is. So he's a half an employee. You're gonna put all that stuff in there, including your subcontractors. If you have a subcontractor that works 20 hours a week, then you'd put him in as a 0.5. What that's going to generate is your every hour rate. This is if you work out of those 48 weeks, if you work 8 hours a day and you had 7 employees, this is what your hourly rate could be. But the reality is that's not going to be your hourly rate because you don't get 8 hours a day out of an employee. And there's waste, there is loading trucks, there is sweeping shop. There are a lot of things that are not truly billable to a project on the floor, and they need to be accounted for. This is based on this is based on a 40-hour work week, but only actually billing for 30 hours. At the absolute best, the best operations, that's the most hours you're going to have billable in your company. On your spreadsheet, there's going to be a little red tab in this corner. It means there's a note here. It's the value added efficiency ratio. Out of an 8-hour day, you don't actually have 8 billable hours. At best, you're going to have 6. If you have 6 hours a day out of 8, you're going to be one of the highest efficiency companies in the world. I don't even think Toyota or Tesla or any of the major companies right now are at that. The national average, these stats go back several years, 10 years ago. I'm sure they improved a little bit, but probably not that much. The national average in the US for manufacturing is 40% efficiency. So that means out of a 40-hour pay week, the most work you're getting, most billable content you're getting out of an employee is going to be 16 hours. You can't actually put that in there. You need to figure that kind of fluff in the inefficiencies into that 6-hour day, because if you only figure 40% efficiency, your hourly rate, your actual hourly rate, loaded man rate, is going to be so outrageously high. You're not even viable as a business. The idea is you need to constantly improve that. We can get into that deeper in a Q&A, or if you want to contact me direct. It's a little bit complicated explaining this. Anyway, when we do T&M, time and materials, or when you do T&M, if anybody ever asks you that, this is the rate you want to use right here, every hour rate, and you're going to bill everybody for every hour rate. That's driving to a job, driving back to a project, setting up, cleaning up, all preliminary, prepping, loading stuff into the truck, all that kind of stuff. You're going to bill them for every hour. When we actually bill a project, I count the loaded man hours. I want to be able to, and you want to be able to bid jobs as fast as possible, because you're not going to get every project, especially if you're dealing direct with the public. You're not going to get every project off the street. Your close rate's not going to be 80, 90%. So you need to be able to bid fast. When I bid projects, we only bid actual billable hours in the shop, production time, manufacturing, finishing, installation. Engineering, like I said, all those other things are on top of that, and then these inefficiencies, that 30-hour work week compared to 40 hours. This is the hourly rate that you want to use when you're actually bidding projects. Don't let your customers see this number. There's something that I did wrong in here. I'll tell you right now, this is way off, because our every hour rate right now is $95, and our efficiency rate, I'm actually billing out at $130 an hour right now in the shop. Whatever those numbers are, they're going to be different for everybody. That's your hourly rate. And getting into the next, there's another seminar going to be presented by another CMA member. He's going to get into bidding an actual project, and these are the numbers you're going to want to use. The next piece of information we're going to need for bidding a project is what the materials are. And remember here, this is what we're going over is art of pricing profitably. We're trying to put together an outlook on your next 12 months, what you're going to need to do. So these numbers are going to be based on how much from last year and what your expectations are for next year. Just like with the hours, we want to be able to bid as quick as possible. The same thing goes when doing material takeoffs. It gets much easier if you only do a couple of different products. If you only build cabinets and you only build one specific type of cabinet with different finishes and all that kind of stuff, your variables are very tight. There should be a set percentage that the bigs that you buy, sheet goods, solids, finish, hardware, are going to be a certain amount, and the smalls are going to be, if you're doing finishing, sandpaper, screws, glues, wiping rags, all that kind of small stuff. You're not going to put this stuff together every time you bid a job. You don't have time for that. You're going to figure out, you're going to go back to your last 12 months, or your last year's report, and you're going to put in what was the total amount of all the bigs that you have, what were all the small consumables that you used, and it's going to figure out the percentage of markup on your material. So when you figure out a job, if you have $10,000 worth of bigs, you're going to put in $10,800 of actual cost to cover all that small stuff that you're not going to dive down into that kind of minutia. That's going to be put onto your bidding process. Now that we have all that information, we have an overview. This is a snapshot of your entire year. Pre-profit snapshot. Pre-commission snapshot. If you have commission salespeople, you'll have to add on for that. Most of you, these numbers are going to be much larger than what you realize because of the things we talked about. not figuring in the depreciation, the cost of your investment, and needing that money to reinvest back in the company, and your owner's salary. This is money that's coming in. It's yours being the owner, but it's not yours. It's the businesses to reinvest back in a company for the machines, and it's your owner's salary. Neither one of them are profit. That's a distinction. Don't ever confuse the two. That is not a profit. We still have not made a profit for the company. We still have not made a profit for ourselves. Both must be done. Okay. These are all the categories. This is how much you must sell this coming year, or you will lose money. I don't want to say it's okay not to make money, but there's going to be years that you don't make a true profit. Things are not going to go great. There's a lot of different reasons. You're not going to hit your total gross sales goal, but you need to hit this minimum, or you're literally going to be paying out of pocket. Everything we went over, including needing the money to replace the machinery, including paying yourself the salary that you must get to live, you have to hit these numbers. And if you don't, you're losing money yearly. You're literally losing money. Forget about even making a profit. This is another little snapshot. This would be the owner based on filling out that salary sheet for yourself. This is going to tell you based on a 40-hour work week what your hourly rate is worth. The reason I put this in here is when you are taking a look at evaluating doing something yourself or hiring it out. And this goes whether it's for your business, hiring a consultant or something like that, or personal use. You're going to have somebody paint your house or do those kind of honeydew things around the house or mow your lawn. You got to ask yourself, especially if your sales aren't enough, what am I going to pay somebody else to do to free up my time so I can work more on sales, driving in more business? So this is that number. If you can find anybody to do anything less than this and free up your time to do it, hire them and free up your time. And no, don't free up your time. Don't, this is not I'm not saying free up your time just to sit there, but this methodology, this mindset is to free up your time so you can go out there and drive business in the door, get the next sale, do whatever you got to do with the marketing, evaluate your business operations, take a look at the last project and figure out where you can do better, be more efficient, make less mistakes. Every percentage point adds up. This next line right here is going to be your minimum for a non-repeat client. So this is your minimum sale for a new or non-repeat client. If you work for a repeat client, you can do a project for less money. This is what this means. So this is how much sales you have to do in a year before you take a loss, and divided by how many work days there are in a year, how many sales days there are in a year. This is the minimum sale requirement you have to make. This doesn't mean that you're not going to do a job for less than this. This means you're not going to try to get working for less than this amount of money. I don't market bathrooms. I don't market widgets. I don't market small items. That's not my business. We are a custom manufacturer for everything that we do. And we build casework and doors and millwork and corbels, and we do everything. Okay. No matter how small a project is, cumulatively, in my time and my engineer's time and Mark's time, our overhead costs that are put on top of those salaries, at a minimum, there's going to be 8 hours between us. It could be a 3-foot vanity. I still have to have that information sent to me. I got to put a proposal together. I got to send that to the client. I got to receive a check. We have to go out there and field measure. We have to do shop drawings. We got to either make a sample or present a sample. We got to get that to the client. We got to come back and we got to call in for materials. We got to do all these other things. If you, based on whatever this number is for you, if you made a sale for $100 or less, if you sold this every day, but your average sale price was $100 less, you would lose thousands of dollars a year. Okay. Don't go after it. Save your time. You're too valuable. Your company's too valuable to be working on small projects. With that said, let me be clear. This is for non-repeat clients. I explained I'm to the trade. It's rare, but I do have clients that send us projects that are less than that amount. 2 days ago, we just delivered a vanity that was like $3,800. When that designer sends me that job, I'm not just going to flat out tell her no. I can't, because she sent me a $3,800 job, but the last job I did for her was almost $70,000. You have to keep in good graces with everybody. You got to do those things for repeat clients. It's part of the business, but if you work it in with other things, it's not the same financial impact as if it was a one-time customer. When we went out there to field measure that job, me and John went out there to field measure. We worked that in with 3 other projects, so we were in and out in 15 minutes. This is also a repeat client, so she knows how we work. She understands the information she needs to get to me. So for us to bid the job and all that kind of stuff, it was a very small amount of work that we had to put in from a management perspective. That's going to tell you based on how many salespeople. If you have more salespeople, I'm the only salesperson for my company. If you have more salespeople, that number is going to be divided by that amount of sales. You got 2 or 3 salespeople, this number is going to be divided by that. Your average weekly production in sales dollars needs to be at least this much, or you lose money, based on 48 weeks, 4 weeks per month, 20 days per month average. This right here is the critical number that I take a look at, and this should be the one that you take a look at. When I said this is your yearly, your monthly would be this number times 4, so 120, called 123,000. My weekly is this. Whether you are producing that much or invoicing that much, whichever way you want to take a look at it, you have to be doing this much 48 weeks a year or you will lose money. This is your one trigger that you have to evaluate. This is the only thing you need to cover. If it's less than this, and you need to dive into it, you need to realize why. What's going wrong? Are you bidding jobs for the wrong price? Are there too many mistakes being made, or is there vendor problems? Did we get sent, what was it, 3 weeks ago, we did a kitchen, delivered it, and it was a multi-step finish, and we went to put the case together, and we found out there was delamination. It was ready for delivery the next day. We had to tear a cabinet apart, reprocess it, all that kind of stuff. So there are going to be problems that are going to come up. As long as you're hitting this number or higher, you're doing okay. You're still not making a profit yet, but you're not losing money. This is your snapshot here. If you have commission salespeople, whatever your commission is going to be, it's going to be part of your gross sale. You need to add that percentage in. That will be in actually pricing a job, which is, like I said, it's going to be another seminar. Profit adding. How much do you put in there? What is a profit? What's the difference between a profit for yourself and a profit for the business? How do we make the money? Profit is a financial gain, especially the difference between the amount earned and the amount spent in buying, operating, or producing something. That's the Webster's Dictionary explanation of it. But you need to define the difference between a business profit and a personal profit. And you need to make both, okay? What would typically be considered a business profit is going to be those costs that we figured in. Remember, we went over replacing machinery, the depreciation, needing the money to reinvest back in a company. On paper, that's profit. But it's not really a business profit, because if the money just keeps going back into it and not being spent on anything else, the company's not making money, you're not making money. But that money needs to be made, okay? The real thing we're talking about here is personal profits, okay? What kind of money do you want to make on top of everything else, on top of that salary and in keeping that business operational? How much do you want to make? How much can you make? If we just went over everything that you know, remember right at the beginning, I said there's 3 categories. Everything we talked about, it only covers what we know now, or what you may not have known before, but what you know now based on this explanation of everything. We still need to get into what we don't know and knowing about it, and trying to figure out what we don't know that we don't know. So how do we make that money? Believe it or not, it's not magic. Everything we've discussed so far, the what we know, is the scientific basis of the art of pricing profitably. Now we're going to get into the art. Now we're going to get into what we don't know, or what we do know but haven't done anything about, and then what we don't know that we need to know. So what is it that we need to know, or that we all should know, but we don't do anything about? What we don't focus on. Everything we went over, all those numbers we discussed, is if everything goes right. Literally everything goes right in your business. There is not a missed day. There is not a material problem coming from a vendor. There is not a client that changes their mind. There is not an employee that had a fight with their spouse and is having a bad day and not is producing the numbers that he should be, okay? There is no perfect business anywhere in this world, and there never will be, okay? So what you don't know, but you should. What are we in control of, and what should we be in control of as much as we can? We can be in control of ourselves, we can control our employees, we can control our vendors, and we control our clients as best as we can. Some of these are not, when we're talking about client and vendor and employee control, this is beyond you. You're never going to be quite 100%. Yourself, you can be 100% if you dedicate yourself to it on improvements. Employees, you need to have training. You need to have procedures. They need to understand what their expectations are. Processes, procedures, efficiency in the shop, all those catchphrases, all the Six Sigma and the Kaizen, whatever it is, all these other things is about being as efficient as possible. Very important. You have to set that up in your company. This is how you can control your profitability. The same thing goes with vendors. So with vendors, you're obviously, things are out of your control. The best thing that you can do is talk to your sales rep, every vendor that you have, especially your everyday ones. Some of them are going to be one-offs. You're at their mercy. But for your bread and butter vendors that you're going to be repeatedly talking to, you need to have this conversation and make it short and sweet with every sales rep you got. The most critical thing there are two critical things when it comes to vendors, okay? Number one is when you call up and get for a price and a lead time something, it is imperative that they always tell you the truth. Always. You need to get this across to them. You need to tell them, don't ever tell me what I want to hear just so you get the sale. I need to know the truth because I need to set client expectations based on what you're telling me. If you're telling me a custom order product is going to take 4 to 6 weeks and expecting me to buy that product from you, then guess what? That product is going to be in my hands in 4 to 6 weeks, or there's going to be repercussions that are out of my control. I can't go back to a client in 6 weeks and I call back and something happened and they tell me it's now going to be an additional 2 to 3 weeks. That's a problem, okay? You need to set these expectations. You need to hold them accountable. You need to set them up front. The more you have this honest conversation up front with your vendors, the better relationship you're going to have. The other part of the vendors thing is, and I understand this, just like I'm a sales rep for my company, he's a sales rep or she is a sales rep for their company. I'm completely in understanding that poop happens. There is no such thing as perfection. I am not perfect. They are not perfect. There is no one perfect in this world, and things are still going to happen. So the second part of the vendor, controlling the vendor and how that works with them, is setting the expectations up front and setting expectations on how things are going to be handled down the road. If you have that honest conversation with your vendors in advance and you have an honest and calm discussion with them when things do go wrong, so they prioritize your needs, that is what matters. I have, not quite as bad as it used to be, but I used to be known, I had a very snappy temper, real quick to get mad. Getting mad and yelling at people is not the way to handle things. You cannot, unless you are perfect every day, and I am not, nobody is. When I realize that's a big difference in the way I take a look at how I deal with people. The way you communicate and the way you work as a team, that's going to get you a lot longer. Same thing goes with clients, but you can't talk to the same way. You can't physically have training classes like with your employee. You can't set procedures. You can't put them through training and give them test scores. You can't have the same conversation with clients that you do with vendors and have that honest thing. You can be. What you can set up is you create guidelines. So I take a look at it like kind of like bowling. If you're a kid or you have kids, you remember bowling, they used to put the rubber bumpers on the side. So you always knock down some pins. So that's the way I take a look at keeping clients down the path to profitability. You can't set in stone and tell everybody exactly what they're going to do and expect them to do it. It's not going to happen. You hope it happens. The quicker people get you exactly the information you need to bid a project and produce a project without a problem getting paid for it, that's obviously the goal. The faster we get there, the less amount of time, the more money we're going to make. You need to keep people down the path by having internal procedures. And as soon as you see triggers come up that you know are going to be problems down the road, you need to nudge them back to where you need to be in a hospitable manner without angering them. You never want to put, this goes with any kind of dealing, but especially with clients, never be accusatory of anybody. You never want to put somebody on the defensive, okay, when things don't go the way you want them to do, because their defenses are going to go up. They're going to be very less apt to work with you to make things better. It's human nature. You do it, I do it, everybody does it. It's also human nature to kind of be reactionary, to kind of be accusatory. Be conscious of that and work yourself away from that stuff. Be proactive. And the most important thing, whether it's with yourself, your employer, your vendors, but most important, your clients, is be 100% honest and upfront about everything. We work for a lot of high maintenance people with a lot of high expectations. Everybody does. I mean, this is not just me, but it is very important that you're honest up front when they're about to sign a job and they ask you for something that's just not realistic. But the problem is at that point, when they're trying to negotiate or trying to get something they want that's not realistic, they're dangling a check in front of your face. They're dangling that deposit for the next job. It is very easy to take a deposit for a job and to say the wrong thing just to get that because maybe there's financial reason you need to do that. The way to take a look at it is whether you need that money or not, don't ever take the money and make a promise that you cannot keep, period. It is going to bite you in the butt down the road. It's not only going to hurt your profitability and your reputation with that client, but if you're like me, where you're working with professionals working for these homeowners and business owners, it's going to ruin your reputation with them. Word travels fast. You're not going to help anybody. You're going to have that, what seems like, oh my God, I got that check in. We're good financially for right now. It's down the road. You're going to do so much damage yourself. So never promise anybody they don't want to hear. Be honest. And the fact of the matter is, from a sales perspective, that's actually better for sales, because most other people, if they are bidding the job against multiple people, when they say those kind of things, other people are going to say yes or whatever they want to hear just to get the job. Most of the time, you're going to be the only person that says no and tell them the truth. And most of the people are going to appreciate that. Or I shouldn't say that. The right kind of people are going to appreciate that. If somebody comes to you and says, I want this job done in 6 weeks, and you know it can't be done, and you tell them, listen, I'd love to do it, but we have previous responsibilities. We actually only have 2 weeks of production, but there's no way I can get this job done on time. It's going to take 8 to 10 weeks. If they cannot accept that as an answer, this is not somebody you want to work for. Okay? They don't respect you. They don't respect reality. This is red flags all over it. The best thing about this honesty approach is it brings in the people who understand you and appreciate your honesty, and automatically forces away the scumbags who are unrealistic or maybe have wrong intentions of either not paying you or using that excuse to screw you down the road. Okay? This is 1 to 100% controllable, predictable, and improvable. You're never going to be in 100% control of everybody else. The one thing you're on 100% control of, you're in 100% control of how much time and energy you spend and focus on making improvements, staying on top of things, and being honest. That is as great of a job that you're going to do. This is the second highest reason for making no profits are. You don't lose money when you have a sheet of material that delaminates or a vendor sends in a wrong project. You lose money when you don't tell people the truth and you don't meet those expectations, and it winds up you have to scramble in the end and spend more time and money trying to make things right than being honest in the first place. That's how you control the money. That's how you control profits. This is the second biggest reason. And here we go. Number one reason for not making a profit: the wild card. We know what we know. The last thing we talked about is things that we don't know that we should, that you can control and you can plan for the best you can. Everything you've experienced, everything others have experienced that they can go through and you can pre-plan it for. Here's the biggest reason you can lose money. The things you have no idea, that you don't even know that you don't even know. Things that have not happened yet, things that you cannot predict, things that not only are not in your control, but a lot of times aren't. They're out of your vendor's control. They're out of your employees' control. They're out of everybody's control. Power outages, storms. I live in the Northeast. There's snowstorms. I have no control over that. There's power outages. Storms knock down power lines. There's just electrical service they work on. We lose power in the shop. So there's that kind of thing going on. We're up in the Northeast. I'll give you two examples of these kind of things. Superstorm Sandy back in, I think was it 2012? It was a while ago. We were shut down for the 2 days that the storm came through. Power is back on at my shop. It was off for less than 12 hours. My shop is a little bit farther north and a little bit farther inland. I didn't watch the news. I drove to work. I had no idea what was going on. I was able to get out of my neighborhood, drove to work, talked to a couple of employees. There was me and one other person showed up. Somebody lived next to the shop. I had no clue how bad things were or what was going on. I actually got a call at 2:00 in the afternoon. My wife called me, told me to get home and try to get gas because all the gas stations were being sold out. And I barely actually made it home because there was no gas left. Anyway, what I'm driving to is, so that storm happened. We could have been operating, but I had no power at my house. My clients had no power at their house. My vendors had no power at their place. Not only that, several vendors who are near the shore got actually flooded. They lost all their inventory. I didn't even know about this yet. I have business interruption insurance. So I called up my insurance provider. Well, get this. Just like it's not a hailstorm on July 4th, because the shop had power, even though my employees couldn't get to work because they had to stay home because they couldn't get gas, and they had to stay home with their families and run generators, do whatever they could. I couldn't get into people's houses because nobody's taking delivery. Nobody had power. Trees are down everywhere. Vendors couldn't deliver materials. We wound up being shut for 6 weeks, 6 full weeks. And because my shop didn't lose power for more than 2 weeks, and because there was no physical damage at my shop, the insurance didn't pay out. But my bills still kept coming in. My rent was still due. My business insurance was still running. I'm still scrambling, making a run around, and not the first couple of days, but when things started coming back online, trying to take care of things, I'm running around trying to do sales. We're going to the shop and finishing out things that we could. So fully up and running in about 6 weeks. Ripple effect to catch up to what that was. It was probably 4 months. So in a 6-week period of time, handling that, I completely wiped out my yearly profits, everything. I made money on every job previous to that. I even made money on the job, specifically the time spent building those jobs during that time frame. But because of all those other variables, it's completely out of my control. Snowstorms, losing power for a couple of days. We had a storm, another small hurricane came through here. We lost power at the shop a couple of weeks ago for 4 days. And then we came back to work the following week and they didn't give us any warning, and the electric company shut off the power again for a day and a half. Upgrading infrastructure, they had done some temporary fixes. So we actually lost work for 5.5 days. Wild card, completely out of my control. Another wild card, soft variables. There's a million of them. We could discuss this forever. but I want to give you this other example because I love it and I think it's funny. So I think at the beginning I said we work all around. We work in New York, but I stated we no longer install in New York City. And this is the reason why. I had this project, great client, beautiful, very kind lady to us. We had done her house in northern New Jersey, and she bought an apartment in New York City, Upper East Side. We bid this project, and I got into the job with this builder that we work with sometimes. He has a regular shop, and then he calls us in to handhold his specialty clients. That's what I'm known for, is having the time to handhold and walk them through so the builders can spend their time focusing on the rest of the job. I'm really good at that. So we had a customer that when I first met her, we went over everything. She didn't have a designer, which was a little bit scared of, but when she told me, she had a lot of pictures. She said, Sean, I know exactly what I want to do for this project. And I said, okay, we'll do the job. So we get into the project. 6 to 9 months later, we are still working on plans. Okay. In addition to that, there were some things that came up in the field. Mainly was that unknowingly, the general contractor had done all the mechanical systems, but they were replanning on just sanding the floors and refinishing them. When we had built projects we were about to install, we got a call from the contractor. The floors were engineered flooring. They came in to resand them and refinish them, and the floors were too thin. All the floors had to come out. We were actually set up. We had tools set up there, and we had stuff staged in one of the rooms. That we were fortunate they were in a penthouse. We were able to move our stuff outside on the balcony. The job shut down for, what did that take, about 8 weeks to recover on that. Out of nowhere, out of left field, we're switching gears. This is a massive project, $250,000, $350,000 job that we're in the middle of. That not only was that a problem there, but we had to scramble and get stuff into the shop. So this goes on and on and on. The other big thing with this job is working in New York City. I had planned from experience, from the things I knew that I had planned I knew that I had to pay guys for 10 hours a day to get 5 hours worth of production. That included driving time, parking, getting up and down the elevators. There's things called quiet hours, all these kind of variables that come into play. I did not plan for the FDR being closed for 2 years. The main highway that I could drive commercial vehicles on to get to the job site was closed for the entire duration of this project. At the end of this job, for every 10 hours that I had to pay people, we had less than 3 hours worth of billable hours a day. I got crushed. In addition to that, after this flooring came in and the client started getting all antsy, she came to me and she goes, she wanted to get everything done there. So me and the contractor met there. And she's ranting and raving, why we're not done, this and that, and all this kind of stuff. And I just, at that point, I kind of snapped. I was still in control, but I point blank said to her, I said, Deb, I said, when we first met, you told me you knew exactly what you want. And her response to me was, Sean, I know what I want. I want to be able to change my mind whenever I want to. Dead serious. That was her answer. Great lady. All these other variables, all this kind of, if this job was not as big as it was, like I said, I don't know, it was at least 350,000. There was some stuff that was even added on there. If I did not add on the profits that I did, which it was huge, I think I added 30% of gross on that, I would have lost my shirt. For a smaller company or a smaller smaller gross volume, or somebody not in financial straits, it could have crushed me. It could have put me out of business. I didn't lose money on that job, but I didn't make a dime on it. Those kind of variables and everything else, soft variables, we can go on and on. There's a guy, Jim Falk. Actually, I think that list might have been posted up on the forum to get you jump started on that. These are the kind of things that you can have no plans for, but you can pre-plan if you understand everything you have and understand the kind of money you need to have to handle these kind of things, and you put enough profits on top of that, you can cover that. This is the number one reason you don't make that you can not make money, and in worst case scenario, actually put some businesses under. Take this pandemic, for example. Thank God we're very fortunate right now. The business is up very good. But I'll tell you right now, 4 or 5 months ago, I thought we were closing the doors. I mean, worst case scenario, thank God it pulled around. But anyway, you could pre-plan the best you can. But the best way to pre-plan is you need to make profits, and very large profits, on every single job. How much profit should you make? The way to take a look at this is you're an investor. You're a venture capitalist. It happens to be your own company. Over 20, 30, 50 years, you could get a 5 to 8% return, no questions asked, in a diversified fund, investing in a stock market and mutual funds and retirement plans and IRAs and all these kind of things. You have to make at least that much, if not more. To make that much and to make more, you need to add on profits that are now getting into multiple double digits on every single project to cover all the hard variables and the soft variables that you have partial control of or have no control of, to make sure that you can ride through all the hard times, all the mistakes, all the employee problems, all the vendor problems, all the environmental problems. You have to do it. I can't tell you how much that is. I can just tell you it's a whole lot. So we can go on. This is on and on. I know I've been talking enough here. We're going to have a Q&A session next week. Either send your questions in on the forum, send them to Amanda. If you haven't done so, send them to them right now through the Zoom meeting, or email director@cabinetmakers.org and get the questions in for next week. I know that was a lot in 45 minutes to handle. Hope you can digest it, and can't wait to talk to you next week. Thanks.